All right. So hi everyone. Thank you to the first or thank you for attending the very first. I flubbed that one. Thank you for attending the very first Project Surfliner sprint review. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Agile or Scrum, the sprint review is intended to be an informal meeting that's held on the last day of a sprint to both review and share what the team has accomplished during the sprint. So typically, but not always, probably like today, this meeting will include some kind of demo. The review is open to any stakeholder who's interested and available in reviewing the sprint's accomplishments, and it's an opportunity for stakeholders to see the project and, very importantly, to provide feedback to both the product owner and the development team. And so this feedback is really important because it may result in modifications to both our product backlog, but also gives us really valuable input for planning for the upcoming sprints. So generally, as an attendee, you should expect several things to happen in one of these meetings. The first is that generally the product owner, so for me, that's me for Starlight and Jessica for Lark, and we'll introduce the goals of the sprint, maybe talk about the larger milestones they're supporting, and also talk about any new capabilities that were included. And then the tech leads, so that's Matt for Starlight and Tom Johnson for Lark, and also any other members of the respective development teams will demonstrate what it completed during that sprint, including, this is the demo part, showcasing any new features or architecture. Stakeholders should ask questions and should provide feedback on what was shared and demonstrated. So if something is unclear to you, if it's not working the way you're expecting, we want to hear, and you are encouraged to share that feedback here. This is a great spot to do it, for us to talk about maybe we need to change our trajectory, update something. And that's the really great thing about working in these sprint cycles, is we want to hear that feedback often and early, so that if we need to change course, we can. And then finally, each product owner may also lead a discussion about what's coming next, and any new items that have been recently added to the backlog that other folks may not be aware of. So for Project Surfliner, our sprint reviews will usually be held every other Friday on the last day of our 2-week sprints. Currently, those are scheduled at 9 a.m. for Lark and 10 a.m. for Starlight. Today's combined review is actually not typical, but because Code for Lib was last Friday, we ended up having to reschedule, and it just seemed much kinder to have it be in one combined meeting as opposed to these two separate ones. But we probably won't have such a large group in future reviews. And so please also, like I said, there was some communication issues with who needed to be included. So if you, now that you're on the meeting, if there's somebody else that you feel like really needs to be included in these, please do let Jessica and I know, so we can get them added and invited. And please also feel free to share this recording with anyone that you think needs to be kept in the loop. So along those lines, all of our Surfliner sprint reviews are public. Like we mentioned, they are being recorded and they will be shared. So if you end up missing one and you want to catch up, it will be available. We're also planning on summarizing them in the Wednesday public stand-up. We know Friday mornings are not necessarily a great time for everyone, so we're hoping that can be an opportunity to sort of generally catch up the larger community on what we've been talking about. So before we actually get started, are there any questions about the purpose of this meeting, anything I said? Awesome. So, so Jessica, do you want to go, since I've just been talking a lot, do you want to get started first with Lark, and then I can?
I don't, because I know that Matt needs to drop off the call.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
I'm okay for this one. It's the next.
Oh, it's the next
the
one.
afternoon one. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, then I can go. That's
okay.
Fine. So just, I want to first start off with going over the goal of Sprint 1 for Lark. So the sprint's focus this time was establishing the initial direction and the architecture for the project. We had hoped to also accomplish our first milestone, and the first milestone we set was an initial standalone platform that we could create, edit, and retrieve authority records. It was a push goal because it's our very first sprint. We've never worked as this collaborative team before. We had to do a lot of learning about who was on the team and the capabilities of the team. But we also, it was a push goal because we only really had 1 week because we had Code for Lib the second week. And it was also full of infrastructure and DevOps, which is always full of lovely surprises and can't necessarily be calculated as well as some straight coding could be. So the accomplishments of this first sprint was from the DevOps point of view. We had a combination goal with Starlight to configure the integrated continuous integration to build, test, and deploy code. And to do those changes automatically. That's commonly referred to as CI or CI/CD. So if you ever see that in a write-up, that's what it means. It's just the DevOps of being able to build, test, and deploy code. So we wanted to get that done, and we did. We also wanted to select a preliminary persistence technology for index current data and events, and we did that as well. That was our storage goal. We wanted to create an initial concept model. That was to create some form of human-readable documentation and machine-readable description of the model, and define the base set of relationships to external authorities and vocabularies, and document how the human-readable and specify the machine-readable form. We also wanted to do, and we accomplished the event log, and that's to do log creation of new authority records in an append-only log, and the log tracks changes to records in the Lark system. So those were the accomplishments that we did in Sprint 1. Did we get to everything? No. We wanted to get to the, we currently can't update the existing authority record through an API in a centralized format. We do expect to get that in Sprint 2. Our goal of Sprint 2 is to deploy a basic authority platform to staging, create a base agent, and update the authority records. So that's what we accomplished and what we didn't accomplish and what we hope to accomplish next time. I'm going to throw it over to Tom so he can demo what we did and then take any questions from people on Lark.
Sure. This will be super brief and will hopefully, maybe it will help ground some of what Jessica said in something concrete. The basic situation is that Lark's initial deliverable is an API for creating and updating authority records. I'm going to go ahead and start screen share. Do you have my screen and can you see these two terminal windows? Cool. So the Lark API service runs as a standalone server, and we can start it. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Normally, we'll do these kinds of demos on deployed infrastructure, but it wasn't part of our DevOps CI/CD scope this week or this past sprint to get a production-esque deployment. That's coming in this next sprint, so hopefully the next time we demo, we'll be demoing from a live server that you can also send requests to. But in the meanwhile, here's me starting it up locally. And I'll leave this running off in the background here so that you can watch what's happening. And then I'm just going to go ahead and send a request to this. Let me do, this might help us see a little better. So I'm hitting the Lark server, which is running at localhost 9292, and I'm going to send it a request. The content type is JSON, and the data is empty. We'll go ahead and say more about that in a second. The relevant bits of the output are, we got 201 created, which means that this record now exists. The content type is JSON, and we got a response body that has the new ID for this object. And if we go ahead and send, I'm going to go ahead and do that one more time and get a different ID so that I don't have to worry about my terminal. Okay, so I'm going to copy that. And then let's do this. So I can do curl. I'll send a request to localhost 9292 and ask for the ID for the thing that we've just created. These IDs will later be arcs, but we don't have an arc minter yet, so we're just hitting UUIDs right now. And if we send this request, we get back 200 OK. Oh, interesting. I expect this to say JSON. We'll have to look at that. But we did get a JSON formatted response with the ID and pref label, which is empty at the moment. So in large part, that closes the loop on what create and retrieve look like for Lark, the Lark CRUD lifecycle. The big thing that's missing at this point, well, I guess there are two big chunks that remain to close out these tickets as we scope them for this sprint, which are we need to at least be able to submit preferred labels. So we got from the metadata folks working last sprint the initial definition of what that data model looks like. So we're just getting that wrapped in nowish. And then the other thing that's still in progress is that, well, as Jessica said, we've done a bunch of work to determine what backends we're going to use. Right now, this is running in memory only. So I can do this and get this repeatedly as long as this server's up. But if I go like this and start it back up again, then this object's going to be missing and I'll get 404. So we have a middleware selected that makes it easy for us to change backends. If you've heard of Valkyrie, that's what this is. But we're in the process of getting Solr and PostgreSQL built into the development and deployed environments. So that's all coming down the pipe as well. And that's the demo. It's the first couple of these are probably going to be these kinds of command line API level things. So look out for that. And I'll quit screen share now so that we can do Q&A.
Thanks for the clarification, Tom, and that lovely, very exciting monochrome demo. And do we have any questions on Lark before we move on to Starlight?
Does everyone on the call know what Lark is, since we have a combined group today?
I think almost everybody should. I would be real surprised. I don't know. Okay, great. And then why don't we move on to Starlight then?
Awesome. So really the goal for Sprint 1 for Starlight was just setting up the team environment. To give a little background to this, UCSB has been working for several months before the collaboration started on setting up Spotlight within our own local environments. We did some work with DCE, and Alex Dunn here had also done some local development work. But when we moved into this new environment, we really needed to get us set up to work as a team, especially since we had an existing code base that we were working on. And really the milestone that this sprint is supporting is to have an initial instance of the Spotlight platform in production for both campuses, ideally by the end of winter quarter. So in about a month. So some major accomplishments of the first sprint were in the areas of both collaboration tools, and this is really more of a Surfliner-wide accomplishment. But we did spend some time setting up GitLab to support the team's work. This included things like developing contributing guidelines, adding merge and issue request templates, setting up our project board, setting up labels, testing out the GitLab workflow, which, just as a spoiler, it was not a great thing, so we actually turned that off. But it was really just, figuring out how the team workspace was going to look like, and what we wanted. I'm not sure if this was mentioned to the stakeholders before, but all of Surfliner is what's called a monorepo. So Lark and Starlight are all in the same Git repository. And so a lot of the configuration work we were doing affected both teams. We also, like Jessica mentioned, did some work on DevOps in combination with the Lark team. So all of that stuff that she was talking about in terms of integrated continuous integration. Unlike the Lark team, we are not quite there yet. For Starlight, we're so close. And that work is wrapping up currently and should be up and running in the next sprint. The other thing we were focused on was the Geniza to Starlight migration. So Geniza was what the UCSB code base was called prior to the Surfliner collaboration. So we needed to get that code base moved over into the new Surfliner monorepo, and also undertakes a high-level code review to make sure that the code base was in good shape for this new collaborative environment. We also spent some time doing some research, both with the UCSB Enterprise Technology Services, just to clarify UCSB's policy on supporting Shibboleth for locally hosted open source products, which there is good news on that front, is that we are now as a campus able to support that for this type of project. And so we started the process of actually getting that set up with campus, so that we can use that as opposed to LDAP for Starlight, which is, I think, great news. We also reached out to the Core Spotlight development team to see if they could share a current roadmap with our group to sort of see where the work that was coming out of our stakeholders aligned with the community, and how that might affect our development roadmap. The long story short is that there is not currently a roadmap for that community. But the good news is that the communication that our team had with that team initiated an idea to have some road mapping happen at LDCX this year up at Stanford. And so that's that. Starlight stakeholders, I'll be reaching out to you before that happens to gather some additional feedback. I also know that Alex continued some work on supporting PDF as standalone exhibit objects. That hasn't been deployed yet because we didn't quite accomplish everything we had set out to do, and the major one being that we have not actually deployed the current Starlight code to both local staging environments, and so we're still waiting on testing out that work. But that is very exciting. Like Jessica had said, it was a really unusual sprint for the team because the majority of the team was traveling the second week, and there was so much time on the front end getting the environment set up. So our goals for the next sprint include actually getting that shared code deployed to the local staging server so we can start testing out some of those new features, getting Shibboleth hopefully set up in the code, continuing the work on uploading and displaying PDFs as exhibit objects, and also improving the test suite. So I'm going to now turn it over to you, Matt, to see if I missed anything or if there's anything that you wanted to share.
No, I think that's the majority of it. There's some other sort of internal things we're working on, upgrading the Starlight application to use the latest version of Rails. The next major version of Rails isn't too far away, and so one of the things we're just trying to be considerate of is being as ready for that as we can. So there's a little bit of that going on. But yeah, I agree that the primary goal for this next sprint is really getting Shibboleth up and running and having, and I think you touched on it, but John did do a bunch of work, and I know Alex contributed significantly also to getting a set of shared Ansible scripts in place, which were based off some work that Alex had already done for being able to ideally leverage those and have unique configuration for each of our institutions' systems, but be able to do deploys based on that shared set of Ansible templates, which will be really nice.
Thanks, Matt. So are there any questions from the Starlight stakeholders or from anyone, or any feedback?
All right. That's exciting. What do you want to end with?
Oh, that's a good question.
A dance?
I was going to say more cats. Uh-oh. Oh, there's a kitty. Oh, look at the kitties.
Hello. He says you guys are jerks.
Greg, were you just looking around for a cat, Greg?
So actually maybe a good, although I love ending on the cat, maybe a good way to end it is just a reminder that starting on Friday, March 8th, we'll have our first regularly scheduled sprint reviews. The Lark sprint review is at 9. The Starlight is at 10. This recording will be shared possibly on the blog. I'm not sure if we figured out how to share it yet. And we'll also have a textual summary that accompanies that. And so let us know if you have any questions, if you think of anything for the team. Awesome.
Thank you guys for preparing this. This is great. I hope that everyone found this to be useful, and it will. I think it was very useful.
Cool.